Hey, Think Realty viewer and listener, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. We're in sunny Tampa, Florida, and we're here for our event. As a part of our events, we do these live podcasts. We've got a great guest for you today. Before we jump into the guests, let me say a quick thank you to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Real Property Management. Working with the right property management company can put more money in your pocket, not less. Real Property Management provides a higher standard of property management to make sure you're maximizing the return on your investment. Experience the real difference with Real Property Management. You can visit them at realpropertymgt.com. That's realpropertymgt.com. Our guest today is a longtime friend, and I have known Romney for quite some time now, and I've always admired him, his company, and what he means to the investor marketplace as well as the lending marketplace. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate it. I want to just jump right in. Obviously, the market is crazy right now, and there's a lot of movement, and I think that you have a very unique perspective because you're both investor and lender. You know, you play on both sides of the fence. So I think there's an interesting perspective that comes from someone who sees both sides, right? If we're primarily lending and we only lend, maybe we only see out of that lens. If we're only an investor and we're the borrower, maybe we only see out of that lens. How do you see the marketplace today? I mean, what's your just feeling? I mean, like if we're talking not fact, what's the emotion side of it?
The big, broad stroke question, right?
Yeah.
The feeling is, sometimes my answers come across a little bit pointed, like this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
But the feeling is like opportunity is abound.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the market is changing, so that's not feeling, that's fact. Sure. But with that, the feeling that brings is people are now vacating the space, and that just brings opportunity. So it feels like opportunities abound.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
So the next feeling is, what's the opportunity, right?
Sure.
So I'm feeling like there's going to be kind of new players entering the space, new strategies that are going to start working. Players and strategies, right? People and strategy is kind of everything.
Sure.
So I feel like we are going to experience a couple of groups, kind of power teams come together and capitalize on a new market that, I guess maybe the more specific question you were asking is like, what's happening with the market? What do I feel is happening with the market? A market that's going from white hot to warm to lukewarm to somewhere between cold and lukewarm. So somebody's going to capitalize on that, and that's going to be exciting. I'm trying to get my little piece.
That's great. I was going back and forth with the New York Times editor the other day because she was stating that Warren Buffett had put $18 billion in liquidity, like sideline money, and she was stating how she felt like he was reacting to his fear of the marketplace. And I responded to her, I said, I think you're thinking of it from a different mindset. I said, from an investor mindset, we see this as the opportune time. Like this is when opportunity comes. I was like, you're missing the point of Warren Buffett's entire career. He doesn't sideline capital because he's fearful. He sidelines capital because he's getting ready to feed. Like he's getting ready to double his net worth from $40 billion to $80 billion in 2008 to 2010. And I said, do you not think that that's what he's about to do again? And I think we get lost in this. And I think that the viewer, the listener, they can kind of find whatever they're feeling right now kind of tells them what their mindset is. An investor mindset sees when everybody else is running out, we're looking for the opportunity to run in, right? And we get excited about moments like this because it's hard to make what we want to in markets that are rising as much as we just recently did, because we're going to be risk adverse when things are moving that fast, right? It's like, is this real? They're printing money, is equity real here, But now we see these massive drops, people jumping out of the market, and the investor mindset says, well, then we should probably be rushing in.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So interesting fact about Warren Buffett. I didn't realize that he had set aside $18 billion for this.
Yeah.
But that's that's kind of everything.
Sure.
That's an indicator. If you
Right.
and I think have talked about moving trucks and where moving trucks are going, that's where you want to maybe be
Sure.
investing, right?
Yeah.
Leading indicator.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett, the Oracle, $18 billion leading indicator. We're doing the same thing as a company.
Sure.
We're raising more money now than ever. We haven't talked in a little while. Fundraising is back. It's alive. It's kind of our new, not necessarily obsession, but we want to be as we want to have as much dry powder as possible.
Sure.
Our world's gotten different over the last 10 years. We've gotten a little,
Yeah.
we've gotten a little complacent with, if you will, with like industry, institutional type
Sure.
partners.
Sure.
And it's been a great run. So now we're raising money, and similar to Warren Buffett, the battle cry right now with my organization is, look, others are retreating. We are going to advance.
Right.
Question is, are we going to slam on the gas, or are we going to just throttle
Sure.
the gas?
Yeah.
And that's a tough one. I was having a conversation with a counterpart, the guy, he runs an equities company, and I run a debt company. And he's like, I think you gotta hit the gas. And I was like, whew, scary. He's like, problem with hitting the gas, you could wrap around a pole.
Right.
And also, you're an equity guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Doesn't that actually say something about you if you're telling me to hit the gas?
He could probably grow to,
Right.
past the moon.
Yeah.
If he hits it just right.
Sure.
An equity guy. So we're thinking our little, piece of the rock debt is kind of where the safe money goes right now. And as a result, we could raise a lot. And then as a result, there's going to be a lot of new demand. That's the other thing. There's new demand. The demand changes now.
Sure.
The same person that was doing a deal yesterday, still doing deals today, but in some different form or fashion.
Yeah.
But many of those people are gone.
Sure.
So,
Well, they've like turned their focus, right? I mean, if
Yep.
you take like the fix and flip world. I mean, I spend a lot of time with fix and flippers, and they're sitting on big inventory. I was just out in San Francisco and talked to a couple of guys that had 20, 30, deals on their plate that were in, and they're in dispo mode, right? Like, get rid of this inventory.
Absolutely.
If we can make money on it, get rid of it. Like, why sit on it as just risk, right? So their focus went from like deal aggregation, finance structure to let's get rid of all this inventory and then we'll live to fight another day. So I think it's like these people aren't necessarily just exiting; they're just refocusing because of where they currently are.
Sure. There's a time to buy. There's a time to sell.
Sure.
There's a time to add value.
Right.
It's funny. My focus right now, as it relates to growth, because growth is something that we all need. And in my business of lending, I need to grow a lending business. I don't need to grow, something else.
Sure.
I need to do more loans. And good loans. So we're really focusing on the new inventory. We've talked about this a number of times. There's a supply shortage, got it. So new inventory that checks that box. Then we've got an inflation problem. In talking to another resident expert, he was saying his portfolio jumped over a handful of years from like $1,200, and I'm misquoting here, to $1,800 a month in rent. That's over a couple of years. Thinking, wow. Well, that's tough to hear. And then I asked him the question. I said, has a gallon of milk kind of hit its ceiling, and is that gonna drop anytime soon? And we both kind of looked at each other. It's like, no, I think price is set.
It's just the new norm.
It's the new norm.
Right.
And so the moral of that entire story is we want to kind of bring more affordable housing to the marketplace.
Yeah.
There is always a place for it. There has always been a place for it, but there's not always been in that super high appreciating market, there's not a lot of appetite for it. The investors see the gain. They don't necessarily see the strategy. Rightfully so. A lot of strategies change now. So we're seeing a lot of affordable housing being built, from manufactured home to whatever you may call it.
Right.
So pointing our guns at that and stuff that's going to be available in a year, not stuff that's going to be available right now. That's that goes against some common wisdom right now. A lot of people are saying now.
Right.
We don't know how long it's going to be, but I rather bring some affordable housing like on today's price tomorrow.
Sure.
I think that's gonna sell.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. With where we are today, how important is partnership and finding a partner? I mean, like, instead of going at this alone, how important is it to kind of find the right partners to navigate so that it's like kind of like that idea of like one will chase 1,000, but two will chase 10,000. It's like, are you multiplying this opportunity by finding partnerships?
Yes, for sure. So I'm so intrigued to have like the businessman to businessman conversation, but I'll kind of bring it back to what I do. And what I do is I'm a lender. I lend money to projects, to new construction projects, so on and so forth. You and I have talked a little bit about my 5 C's of underwriting. It's collateral, credentials, cash, credit, and character. Sometimes I forget them. I've recently polled about 15 institutional players in the game. Every one of them, you know them on first name basis. And I've polled about 25 of my borrowers. Some of my bigger borrowers, the guys that are borrowing 2, 3, 4, up to $10 million a year.
Sure.
And I've asked them a couple of questions. And one of the questions was about the 5 C's. What did you see as the most valuable thing then? What do you see as the most valuable thing now? And the one thing that changed at the capital markets level, at the institutional partner level versus the borrower level, the borrower always leaned on experience.
Sure.
If I've got experience, I'm awesome.
Yeah, I'll find a deal. Yeah,
exactly.
Find capital. Yeah.
Or in that case, we call that credentials. So
Yeah,
experience
right.
credentials. Some of them, if they've got, some
I would
of them are
assume
just.
they're hoping that collateral goes down because with actual values decreasing. That's obviously a big issue.
Collateral changes up here, which is surprising.
Yeah.
So with the capital markets guys, now they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Give me credentials.
Yeah.
Give me experience.
Sure.
So, give me the guy. Don't give me the strategy.
Right.
Really, really interesting.
So more on the operator than the actual strategy of the operator.
Absolutely. And I get it. I mean, who did we take care of the minute we saw these rates going?
Sure.
Our best clients.
Right.
We've made that mistake. COVID taught us a couple things. 2008 taught us a lot. But so I'm saying all this because you said, a partner, what does that look like? I think it's incredibly important right now because if credentials are the most important thing, not all of us have the same credentials.
Sure.
I've raised a little bit of money, but I can't put together a $500 million fund.
Sure.
I need a partner for it. Right? I've invested in a ton of single family homes. I've never built an apartment building. I need a partner for it. So there's all kinds of, of the 5 C's, partnership's going to be important right now because what happens right now in this type of market is the selectivity, like the capital markets are selective. They're only taking what they consider to be the best.
Sure.
So if they're only going to take the best and you've only got 3 or 4 of those things, fully loaded, you're going to need to kind of beef up the team.
Yeah, that's a great.
Enter the point of the power team. Sorry to interrupt. I do
good.
believe some power teams form out as a result of this.
And that's kind of like your premise that you started off with, is that's why the power teams come together, is because essentially, they've got to formulate best deal, best opportunity, best strategy because of the limitation of the potential capital market.
Absolutely, man. Sometimes you've got capital, sometimes you've got operators, sometimes you've got marketers. Whatever it is that needs to come together, I do think those teams are going to start finding themselves. A little bit like Voltron back in the day when we were kids.
Yeah, I'll give you a real world experience or testimony to that. About a couple weeks ago, I was trying to get a multifamily deal done. I've done close to 4,000 doors, and have a fairly decent net worth, so I usually don't have the balance sheet issues that most people do when they're borrowing. And I went into my local community bank, who's done 1,000 doors for me, and they said, well, this time we're not going to allow your self-directed IRA capital that you usually keep fairly liquid over here to be counted in the equation of your net worth.
No kidding.
They're like, you can't count that. Well, for me, that's how I avoid all taxation, is I make sure so many of those deals get done through that vehicle.
That's a big number.
And so then I'm like, but I actually had to go find a partner, a balance sheet partner, to get this deal done. I've never had to do that before. But again, I brought this guy in. He was like, this is a great deal. Thanks for bringing me in. Sure, I'll essentially lend my balance sheet to yours so that we can get this deal done. We structured it properly. We both walked away happy. And then we walked out and I said, you want to do some more deals together? It's like all of a sudden that partnership was formed out of necessity more than anything. But then now I see it as the power of two chasing the same opportunity, Yeah,
I haven't necessarily kind of flipped over to think about it from that perspective. I was thinking about getting a deal done.
Sure.
But it goes so much further than that.
Right.
So I really appreciate what you just said there because it's kind of how we do deals, right? I've got a deal right now. I don't know exactly the unit count, but it's something to the tune of 150 to 200 units. We're going to finance a multifamily.
Sure.
We're sitting here in Tampa, Florida. The main operator is here in Tampa. We're in Austin. This property is in San Antonio, Texas. I may have told you about this at one point, some brief kind of version of this. But long story short, incredible developers were behind this project. And they've been behind this project for years, plural. They located a number of lenders, and a number of lenders had a number of different things, and similar to your situation, they needed a balance sheet.
Sure.
So they find this multifamily operator who has a balance sheet and has obviously an appetite in that property type.
Sure.
And they partnered with him. And I don't know exactly how many doors, say, the developers have built in their career, but I know that this guy owns about 4,000
Sure.
units right around this
Yeah.
part of the world. And that deal wouldn't have been done without him. And that was a little bit of kind of a forecast of things to come,
Sure.
because that's the way deals are going to get done now.
Right.
So there's, as I mentioned, there's a lot of we're selecting the best of the best, and that means all of the things that could potentially go wrong are mitigated.
Yeah.
Capital, operator, you name it.
Yeah. And I think stepping that, just taking that a step further, partnerships obviously are needed today in this marketplace. And maybe not a one-on-one partnership like I stated, but even like with Streamline Funding. I mean, obviously, looking at our lender, a debt partner, right? Like all of that is true partnership. How do I know when I should bring on a partner, engage, and when should I engage? Do I engage after I find a deal? Do I engage early so I make sure that I have the partnership already kind of prearranged? Like,
Yeah.
what advice? That's
an interesting question. I think you're kind of one of the best that I know at in the game. I think you engage early and you pull the trigger when it's time. So we haven't pulled the trigger on something right this second, but we're engaging right now. Like
Sure.
we're kind of setting up the opportunity to jump into some type of partnership.
Sure.
So engagement immediately. I was just typing something up for Think Realty, some article, which writing's not my jam.
Yeah.
Oh boy, but I do enjoy saying it. It just it comes from a deep
Sure.
place. And I was, as I was putting that together, I was saying put together your audience, whatever that means. However you get it, put together your audience, talk to your audience. And again, one of the things that I always find so interesting about you is that you talk to your audience like this and the way that we communicate. Because when the opportunity presents itself, it's literally a phone call away. So kind of nurture the list, the audience, and then when the time is right, engage. So engage early.
Sure.
But the thing about a partner is interesting. A financial partner is one thing. It could be expensive. On a dollars from a economic standpoint, a capital partner is expensive.
Sure.
An operating partner, while expensive, is invaluable.
Sure.
So a financial partner, somebody gives you X amount of dollars to do a thing, great, we divvy up the pie at the end
Right.
when we all made our money. Might have cost you more than, say, a lender, right? An operating partner, because you can't necessarily achieve that thing without that person.
Sure.
The opportunities are endless.
Right.
So when to engage early, who and how. Have your capital lined up, have your operators lined up. Kind of the cash squad and the
Sure.
team that does the things that take you to the next level.
Right. It's
Yeah.
awesome. And obviously, if you are one of those, look for those people that play the opposite side of you. If you are an operator, you should be lining it up because, again, like you said, these teams are kind of coming together because the deals are getting bigger, they're getting better, and to some degree more difficult to get done today. And so the lone wolf is really going to struggle, in my opinion, in this kind of like next ebb and flow of the marketplace, right? So I like your point there for sure.
By the way, speaking of the lone wolf, I do think people, certainly like you, and in many ways like me, are kind of looking to support the lone wolf because they've got a special talent. Everybody's got something. And while I might just bring capital and a little bit of infrastructure to the table, they might bring whatever they bring.
Sure.
I see the media, company and maybe even empire that you're building. Who'd you partner with for that? And I know the way that you're wired, it's a little different,
Sure.
but a lone wolf could turn somebody who's got just great, a great product into a household name.
Sure.
By just kind of connecting with the right team.
Absolutely.
I'm looking for lone wolves right now.
Yeah.
If somebody that needs a pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's a great point. It's like if they may struggle if they don't find people like you, in this next kind of economic cycle. Not because they're not great, but because of the way that business is being done today. Like I found myself in need of a partner when I haven't needed a partner in 10 years, because of where the market is. So I really appreciate that. The other thing too is like just the mitigation of risk. So many real estate guys were doing heavy cash deals. today to do a variety of deals, but finding a lending partner where you're sharing on it, you're also sharing risk. And that's the thing is like, sharing risk and sharing reward is a valuable strategy today. Being by yourself in a deal and only doing one deal, is to some degree a little bit dangerous. So
I think so too, man. And I do think right now, if you can access capital by way of debt, why not?
Right.
I mean, I guess that's probably true for all market cycles. But right now more than ever, because there's going to be a whole lot of no's going out.
Sure.
There's going to be a lot of loan declines. People are going to be seeking debt financing, and it's not going to be available.
Yeah.
So if you could get it, I think that's the person that should consider hitting the gas.
Sure.
Get as much of that as you can.
Yeah, if it's available, why not?
If it's available.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you can find the right deal, right? I mean, the deal is everything. One last question, and then we'll wrap up. But as far as the marketplace is considered, what's a good key indicator that we should run in? That maybe the market has shifted enough that the opportunities are now there and we've kind of bottomed out. I know the Federal Reserve will probably raise interest rates here the next 30 days again. It's kind of inevitable. We always know that there's a pause after an interest rate rise, whether it's a 30-day pause or whatever that is. We'll kind of see the market just go, how does that feel? And then once it kind of feels okay, then they'll start moving forward again. Is it like right after that? Like what are maybe just a key indicator you look for on pushing the gas just a little bit more, letting off? Is there anything that you kind of look at as a rule of thumb?
There's so much to talk about there. I mentioned the poll or the survey that I took of my capital partners and some of my borrowers, and I asked them the same question. All were interesting. Some were predictable. Days on market, inventory, interest rates. But the others were a little bit more, unpredictable. There was a lot of kind of minutia. Some people were looking at minutia. I'm not gonna bore you with those details because they're so interesting that we could talk for an hour. I think I need to share this report with you.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I actually just got a couple more entries in there. It's not many. It's about 17 to 20 all in. All that to say. Interest rate's kind of my biggest driver. I have to think of it at a macro level. I could get a little bit more micro, but interest rate's my biggest driver. And then kind of reading the news, reading the tea leaves of what's coming next with interest rate moves. As interest rates go up, sentiment changes, goes down. As interest rates go down, everything kind of settles.
That you're talking about like consumer confidence, like
consumer
the confidence in the.
Excuse me.
You're good. That's what but that sentiment you're talking about is like how the consumer feels about the marketplace.
Yeah, and the investor is not too far behind.
Yeah.
The investor, generally speaking, the consumer is generally their client.
Yeah, right.
So they need to either sell to the consumer or rent to the consumer, whatever the case may be. So interest rate's kind of my big one.
Okay.
And I only say that because that's where strategies change. There is a strategy, I don't know it, that exists in a 13% interest rate environment.
Sure.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
But I do know that there's an interest or there's a strategy in every market. So I'm looking at interest rates more than anything. That will tell me what I need to do for my clients. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you being a resident expert. If they have not been on there, you've put a lot of videos on recently. If you want to learn more about all that underwriting criteria that he talked about, the 5 C's.
Oh, God.
He's got those on our resident expert videos. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it, bud.
Yep, absolutely. Let me give you a quick plug to our sponsor one more time. This episode is brought to you by Real Property Management. Working with the Bright Property Management Company can put more money in your pocket, not less. Real Property Management provides a higher standard of property management to make sure you're maximizing the return on your investments. Experience the real difference with Real Property Management. Visit realpropertymgt.com. That's realpropertymgt.com. Thank you, Think Realty listener and viewer, for being a part of the podcast today. If you have not joined us on social, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, make sure you follow us, get a part of the conversation. We want to hear from you. And good luck with your investing strategies. Happy investing.